Welcome back to the CANDYcolored studio. I'm artist Katrina Berg. This is episode, let's see, where are we on? 189, and I'm trying out a whole new program today. So 3.5 years into podcasting, and I'm trying a new platform. So we'll see how it goes. So bear with me. I'm sending out a lot of love to you today, and I know you're probably trying new things today too. So just know I'm thinking about you. And so we've got a packed show. I've got an artist tip. We're going to talk about commissions, specifically how I do commissions. And then I've got a good red pill for the end. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm happy to be with you today. So I'm also recording with a camera, so I will start putting these on my Rumble channel as well as my YouTube channel if you want to actually watch the live version. And also, it's great for, like, when I talk about commissions, I'll be showing paintings. You'll also see a view into my studio. There's some really interesting things going on in there as well. So that's what's going on. So let's get started. So for today's artist tip, I guess it kind of starts out with our Easter dinner. So we got to have Easter dinner at my husband Carl's mom's house, and we got to hang out with a lot of Bergs, and that's always good. And we were sitting with our cute Aunt Catherine, who is quite a bit older, and she was like the head of women's sports down in Southern Utah University for a long time. So she taught, and she's done all kinds of things. She's been on all kinds of committees to help with women's sports. She really was like one of the main people that helped with women's sports in Utah get it going. So she's awesome. And one of my nieces, who's pretty young, was talking about her gymnastics and how she was struggling. And I'm probably going to butcher it, but I think she was doing like a backflip on the balance beam, and she's kind of hit a trigger and she's getting scared. Anyway, so they were chatting, and cute Aunt Catherine said, have you been visualizing it? Are you practicing in your mind doing it? And do you fall off the beam? And she's like, no, I don't. Anyways, so with that in mind, I was giggling to myself because I thought, oh, I was just listening to this awesome episode by Jessica Libor. And if you don't know Jessica, she has a podcast. It's called the Inspired Painter Podcast. And the episode that I was actually listening to is episode 70 that I was thinking about. And she entitled it Manifesting Your Art Career Using the Law of Attraction and the Law of Assumption. And it's such a good episode. I'm going to go back and re-listen to it again this week. But I love this idea of manifestation. I've heard lots of different takes on it, lots of different suggestions of how to do it properly or to be the most successful with this idea of manifesting. I loved what Jessica shared because she shared some real examples for her. And these examples that she shared and the techniques, again, this law of attraction and the law of assumption, they're great. Obviously, they're great for artists, but it's really good for anybody that wants to manifest goodness in their life. If you want to see change and good change, this is a great way to do it. So I can't recommend it enough. And if you go to my podcast page on my website, katrinaberg.com, I will put a player. I'll put a player, and you can actually listen to the episode right there. There will be links to Jessica's podcast, so you can go that way as well. Okay, so that's the tip for today. And now I want to jump into commissions. So I'm doing a little mini series about commissions, and there's something for everyone. This particular episode is mostly going to be for collectors, but it will also give you an idea of how I do commissions. So if you want to, get new ideas to see if you want to change a little bit of what you're doing, that is great too. So one of the first things that I do when I have someone who wants to do a commission, there's a couple things that I ask them. And I guess the first thing that I ask is, what is the subject that you're hoping for? Because I work in lots of different series. Obviously, I love to do florals. I love to paint birds and other creatures. I love to do interiors and landscapes and spiritual pieces with a lot of meaning and symbolism. So I think the first thing that I want to know or that I ask my collectors is what's the subject that you want in this piece? That's the first thing. And then the second thing that I ask them is are there paintings of mine that I've already done that you really like, that that you were drawn to, so that I can think about that while I'm creating a piece just for you. And so I think it's super helpful. I've had some people come in and say, okay, I want something very similar to these pieces, right? And that's super helpful. Then the next thing that really helps me personally is, as you know, I like square and rectangular pieces, but I also like curves. So I guess the next thing is, okay, what shape do you want your piece to be? Do you want it to be an oval? Do you want it to be a square? Or do you want it to be like a circle, right? So you have lots of different choices. And then once I understand what you want, then that dictates, if I need to have someone make the board for me or if I can make it myself. And just FYI, if it is a square or a rectangle, Carl and I can create them here in the studio. But if it's a circle or an oval, I usually have my good friend and artist, Todd Orchard, do those for me because he has all the special tools and the skills to do that. So that might mean that your commission might take a little bit longer, just because sometimes it takes a while for the artisans to give me the materials I need to start on your piece. So that would be the next thing. And then I guess after we find out what shape you want, then I need to know, do you want it framed or unframed? So for example, when I showed you the oval, this is an unframed piece. It could be framed, but it has a cradle. So it has sides, so you can hang it just the way it is, and it's very modern. And anyways, that's how that one works. But then there are flat pieces. Sorry, this one's super heavy and super durable. This is my latest completed circle piece. And you can tell it's actually pretty thick and sturdy, but this piece is going to go in a frame, and it's going to be it's a gorgeous custom frame by Todd Orchard, and it's coming to my house this weekend, and I'm really excited. But yeah, so this piece you pop into a frame. So I guess then, if you want a frame, then you have to decide, do you want me to help you with the frame? Do you want to do the frame yourself? Is it going to be a pop-in frame that just sets in the frame, or is it a floater and the frame kind of comes up around the piece? These are all really important questions to think about, and also for me to know so that I can really help you. And then I guess the final question when it comes to framing is, what kind of frames are you interested in? Do you like a modern, very simple frame like this one? This one is very simple, gold leafed. It's an amazing frame. And this one came from Dave Brown in Springville. And then I also have this fun frame. And it came from Alpine Art in Salt Lake, which I love working with them. This is another pop-in frame, and the moldings for this frame are from Italy. They're incredible. Like, I love the moldings on this piece. They almost look ceramic, and they have a little bit of, that traditional, or, all the fun little details. So you have to ask yourself, do I want it to look modern? Do I want the frame to be more traditional or have details and engravings? So again, I have lots of different frames, as you can see looking behind me, but it's just a question of, do you like the frames that I have, or do you have a specific framer that you like to work with and you want to do something totally different yourself? And that's great too. Like, I'm happy with whatever, but these are things that I have to consider while I'm painting your piece. If I'm going to be dropping your piece into a frame, I need to realize I'm going to lose a little bit of your painting to the frame unless it's a floater. And if it's a floater, I'm going to make sure to paint the sides gold so that you see that instead of like a rugged, well, unless you want it rugged. I think it looks better. It looks more finished if I paint the sides gold. And that's just with my particular pieces. I like the way that looks. Okay. So then after you've kind of made these general choices, then the next thing that I need to ask is what color palette do you want? Obviously I'm known for CANDYcolored pastels, but I also throw in a lot of other colors as well. So you just need to be specific. Do you want jewel tones with some pastels? Do you want mostly pastels with a few primary colors? And that's kind of the general idea. And then what I also like to ask are, what are 3 yummy colors that you absolutely cannot do without? And so I like to get those colors, make sure they're included. And then I think the most, even more important sometimes, are there 3 colors, up to 3 colors that you don't like, that you do not want to see in the painting? And it's interesting because I have found that people have very particular feelings about these colors, just like I do. And so I like to make sure that we get your favorite colors in there and that we do not include colors that are repelling to you. Okay, so then I guess the next thing would be the size. What kind of, obviously, when it comes to making the boards, we can do just about anything. So you can measure your space. You can say, I saw a piece and I really liked that size. I want something similar. But again, the size, just trying to decide exactly what size is going to be good for you. And then one of the last things that we need to do before I get started is I like to take 50% down to just reserve your commission and to get going. And then I will send you pictures along the way. And then when you like the piece and you're ready, then you finish paying the last 50% and I will deliver it to you, or you come pick it up, or I ship it. All those things happen. Now, something important that I need to tell my collectors is that because of my style, I like to do a wet on wet approach. Once I start painting, it's really like, I don't change the commission, I don't change the overall composition of the piece, because I like that wet on wet. And I also like it to look smooth, and there's just a very specific way when I use that much paint that things need to happen. And if I have to go back in and change things, it tends to kind of disrupt that natural flow of the way that the paint falls. And just, anyways, so there you go. So what I do about that is that I typically will sketch out everything first. And that's with all of my pieces. I sketch it out really, really carefully. In fact, if I turn the camera, you can see, oh gosh, I'm working on this big one. And what you can't see are all the sketching that's happening also. So again, it's all sketched out from the very beginning. And then once you and I are both happy with that sketch, then I start to paint. And like I said, once I start to paint, we need to be happy with that the composition, because that's what it's going to be. But again, I want you to be so happy with the piece. So I will send you lots of pictures. You're welcome to come over and look at it. I have collectors come and look at the piece at various stages, and that also works really well. So that's kind of how I do it. I like to keep it as simple as possible, but also I just want you to really enjoy the process. So I try to include you as well, depending on your comfort level or what you have happening in your life. So that's my process. And then of course I would let you know that on my website, katrinaberg.com, I do have a tab under the original oils and shop tab. There is another tab called commissions. And if you click on there, I have a very similar video to kind of what I presented today, and then a form, and you can actually go through and make the choices right in that form, and it gets sent to me and I can look over it, and then I contact you. And that's really works out really well with the commission process. So that's the last thing I would say about that. Okay, let's jump into our red pill. So a little over a week ago, has it been 2 weeks? Maybe it's been 2 weeks. There was a documentary that came out called Watch the Water. And if you haven't heard about it, which you probably haven't, because it has not basically hit mainstream media, right? People aren't talking about it on mainstream media. And so I guess the red pill today is, why aren't we talking about this? Okay. So I was just doing a quick search, and I actually searched the words, you're going to giggle, movies with water pollution. And I'm just going to read to you some of the movies. Like I thought of Aaron Brockovich and the something like Dark Water or something like that. I thought about those right off the bit. Like, those are the first two movies that I thought about. But then let me tell you a few others. There's Home, Godzilla versus Hedorah, Gasland, The Devil We Know, There's Something in the Water, Flint, Monstroid, Biosludged, First Daughter and the Black Snake, The Creek Runs Red, City Sit Salt. Sorry, obviously I haven't seen that one. There's one in Spanish, Vodka na Van. Oh, maybe it's not even Spanish. I'm not even sure what that is. Okay. An Imminent Threat, Whose Dominion, Water in the Dream of Engineers, Outrage at Valdez, and Plasticized. So there's a lot of movies out there, and these are movies. These are not documentaries. These are movies. So I guess the first thing that I was thinking about was, have I seen movies that talk about possible threats to the water or pollution in the water? Now, this list was specifically with pollution, but I'm guessing that you and I have both seen multiple TV shows or movies where they talk about how the water source is contaminated, or it's been, I don't know, it's not safe, right? And so I've seen shows where there are bioattacks, and it's being like, the whole way that it's happening is in the water. I can't even remember which show it was, but it was New York City, and they have their water supply on the aquifer. And so it's like this amazing water source, but it's also really easy to contaminate, unfortunately. Again, I am not an expert about this. I totally recommend that you look up all of these things. But again, water pollution movies, there's quite a few out there. So I guess the first question is it possible that water can contaminate things, right? Or can be the source of the contaminant? And absolutely, there are quite a few lawsuits out there about water being contaminated, right? So Flint, that movie, which I haven't seen, is most likely about the city of Flint, Michigan, where they were being contaminated for years. And I think the people were having like cancers and like autism, and all kinds of horrible things were happening because of the chemicals that were being dumped into their water supply. I also thought back to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is basically he has his own Water Keeper Alliance that I learned about at the beginning of the pandemic. And they started by trying to protect the Chesapeake and trying to make sure that their water supply for all the people using it, that it was safe, and they weren't allowing others to come in and pollute it. And then that was so successful that they were able to then start helping others to create their own water keeping alliance to basically make sure their waters are clean and safe and secure from chemicals and other things happening in the water. So if it's possible that we can have damage to the water, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean if contaminants can get into our water supply? Now, I have a very personal experience with being contaminated, having contaminated water supply. For a while, we were living in a house that was on a well. And I can go into great detail if you want to hear more about it. But we discovered that a lot of people in the neighborhood were struggling with cancers and all kinds of strange health problems. And then we found out that our neighbors were actually dumping the chemicals from their car wash directly into their yard. So they dug a hole and they were just dumping these chemicals. So by the way, all the car washes, it seems, in our valley are all owned by the same company. And so a lot of cars being washed, and you've got to do something with all the dirty water, everything that has been cleaned off of these cars, the salt, the oil, the gasoline, anything else that's come in contact with that car before it's washed, then gets put into like a receptacle. And then that receptacle needs to be taken care of properly. But what was happening was they were dumping it into a hole in their yard right next door to us. And so what was happening was everyone in the neighborhood were all on wells. And so it was seeping into all of our wells. It was also contaminating everyone's property to the point where the cattle, the livestock, everything that was eating the grass in that neighborhood was also getting contaminated, again, from the water, from the wells, coming from the dumped chemicals in the neighborhood. So I have a very personal connection, and I know it's hard to imagine that people would do this. These are good people that live next to us, and for whatever reason, they didn't find a secure way to get rid of this contaminated water. All the soaps and the detergents. I mean, we were eating and drinking it, and so were our animals. It's kind of gross now that I think about it. So I think that it's hard to imagine that somebody would do that. But I'm telling you, these were good people that lived next door to us. And for whatever reason, they made this choice. Okay. And so is it possible that other businesses are also dumping chemicals into our water source? Well, we know that there have been. In fact, 50 years ago in 1972, the Clean Water Act was created to protect us from pollutants. And so that was created. And there was actually April 6th of this year, so just a few weeks ago, there were some changes made to that Clean Water Act. And I'm just going to read to you a little bit about it because I'm just trying to understand what exactly is happening. But basically, I'm just going to read this. This is from the National Law Review, and it says the Supreme Court surprised many observers with this Clean Water Act decision, but it may not mean what some observers think it means. Today, 5 justices of the United States Supreme Court reversed a California Federal District Court judge's decision vacating a Clean Water Act rule enacted by the Trump administration EPA. The 2020 rule had reduced the role of states and tribes in the insurance of certain federal Clean Water Act permits. Several states and others immediately challenged that rule in the federal district court. After the 2020 election, the Biden administration asked the court to remand the rule, having already determined that it would revise it but not to vacate it. The federal judge decided to vacate the rule anyway. Some will say that this 5-4 decision is evidence that the now conservative majority of the Supreme Court will use the Rapanos case pending before the Supreme Court and others to narrow the reach of the Federal Clean Water Act. I think that's mixing apples with oranges. Although the majority doesn't explain itself, I think it's pretty clear that 5 justices didn't think much of a district court judge vacating a duly promulgated nationwide regulation, especially without determining the merits of the lawsuit challenging the rule, and especially when the agency that did the promulgating didn't ask for such an extreme remedy. Okay. There's more. I will link to this particular article in the show notes, okay? But again, I don't totally understand what is happening. Obviously, the Clean Water Act has been around for 50 years, but at the same time, does that mean we've been drinking clean water for 50 years? I definitely haven't. There are some places that I've lived where I will not drink the tap water. I won't drink the tap water here in Midway, Utah, because I know that we're getting things in the water. There are certain things still coming through our water system. So we do have a filtration system. Okay. Then I also wanted to bring to your attention, and I will put another link in the show notes so you can go look at it yourself. But the CDC, they have what is called COVID-19 wastewater management, water surveillance. Okay. So you can actually go on their website. And again, I will put a link in the show notes. You can look and see where close to you throughout the US, they are monitoring the water for COVID-19. So again, I have lots of questions. What I have heard, and again, do your research, decide for yourself. I have heard that what they do is they monitor the wastewater. And then if they detect the COVID-19, then they say, oh, there's going to be an outbreak. But that seems weird to me, because if it's already gone through our systems and it's in the waste, then most likely we were already exposed and we're on the mend. So I'm a little confused as to the whole process, but that's okay. I think there's always more going on than what they're telling us. I think there's always reasons to have questions, just like with the Clean Water Act. Why did they overturn that? What's going on? I don't totally know. Time will tell. But I think it's something to be aware of, to ask questions, and to keep researching. Okay, so the whole reason why I wanted to bring up this red pill was, again, because of the documentary. So this documentary, there's all kinds of information, and I would totally recommend that you watch it. You might be very shocked. And if you start feeling some cognitive dissonance take over, realize it's normal, because it seems crazy that they could poison people in the water. However, as we've seen in other court cases throughout time and also in movies and shows, we know it's possible. So if it's possible, that means, what do I do about it? How can I make sure and protect my family, my loved ones? And how do I stand up, against people who are not being honest or fair with everyone with the water? Okay. So in this particular documentary, which is about 50 something minutes long, Dr. Artis, and I believe he's from Texas. I've been hearing from him quite a bit during the pandemic, and Stu Peters, who is a podcaster from Minnesota, who I actually really enjoy. They talk about the possibility that COVID-19 is more than what we think it is. They talk about poison. They talk about the water supply. So I totally recommend you check it out. Again, it's not hitting the mainstream news. And so I have to ask myself, why did they not want it to hit the mainstream news? I think it's so important. For me, it doesn't matter to me what people think about it. The important thing is, if you want to be able to look at it and to decide for yourself, that is way more important to me than the ability to stop people from seeing the information. I think the most important thing is that we have informed consent, that we are able to look at the information and decide for ourselves, right? So watch the water 50 minutes. And if you want to email me about it, that's fine. I will say, even though it hasn't hit the mainstream media, there have been quite a few follow-up interviews that are out there. Stu Peters did a lot of he did some follow-up with Dr. Artis, but then also a lot of doctors and scientists have come forward to support the information that Dr. Artis presents during the documentary. I would also say that there are some networks out there that I actually really enjoy. Like, for example, I love Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and he's protecting the water. He has his own platform called Children's Health Defense, and he has a whole network of journalists that are out there looking at all the information and presenting it to the people. One of the articles that came out the next day about this documentary was, some could say it was a hit piece, but they basically don't trust the things that Dr. Artis says based solely on the fact that he's a chiropractor. So that's interesting too. What I love about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is that he allows his journalists to ask questions and to say, look at this a little bit deeper, right? And I think that that's good. We need to see all the sides so that we can use discernment and we can listen to our heart and make good choices. I think there were a couple other kind of pieces that I saw that were against, but I haven't seen anything. Again, watch it, decide for yourself. And then if you want more information, there's, like I said, Mike Adams, the health ranger, he did a follow-up interview with Dr. Artis. It was much longer. They went into a lot of the proof and the details, and you can look and you can research it all up for yourself. Everything that Dr. Artis shares, you can go and look up the proof for yourself. So it's good. I think ultimately for me, I was kind of researching all these things, and Carl was a little worried because I was getting a little frustrated, but ultimately there were so many things happening over the last couple of weeks. I didn't feel like I was getting able to dive deep as quickly as I wanted to, and just trying to figure out the best way to protect our family, our loved ones. We just want to be really aware, because I know that there are people out there that don't have our best interests at heart. And maybe that sounds really horrible, but I would rather have my eyes wide open and take the time to look at these things instead of just poo-pooing things and saying, oh, that can't be possible. He's just a chiropractor, right? But it's pretty fascinating. If you take the time to have an open heart and mind and look at it and then go do the research yourselves, I think that no matter what you decide, I think that you'll feel empowered because you looked at it yourself. You just didn't. I don't like waiting for mainstream media to just simply tell me this is how you need to believe about this particular thing that's happening in your life. I want to go and decide for myself. So that's your red pill for the day. Go listen to Jessica Lieber's episode number 70. I promise you're going to love it. And then commissions. It's such a gift. And that was just number 2 in the mini series. I've got some more that are going to be coming out the next few weeks. And I'm excited to share these ideas with you. I know that everyone's facing hard things right now. Just because we had some good things happen in our lives doesn't mean that there's not still hard things. So just so you know, I'm thinking of you and sending so much love. I know that God loves you and I love you too. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Just feel loved even amidst all the hardship. So lots of love from the CANDYcolored studio. And I'm going to try to play my jingle, my end jingle. Here we go. There you go. All right, stop.